My computer's being a little silly about it because every now and then when I start this up, the webcam kind of gets funky. There's going to be a short clip of that until I delete it. So, I have a webcam! It works again! It's a little far away. I think my monitor moved since the last time I did this. Let's see here. Can I move the monitor without completely screwing everything up? Making a huge mess. Yes, come closer. Alright. That's better. Okay. What are we looking at? I'm gonna start, I'm actually still doing early stream startup stuff here to see if everything's working properly, and people are still kind of getting past the initial ads. Yeah, let's see here. Okay, that says it's good. So I'm gonna close that then. Yay! And I've got chat. And I'm gonna turn on my computer sound so you can hear that in case anybody joins via TeamSpeak. And I'm going to
Microphone activated.
do that. Alright. I'm going to hide this, and I think we're good to go. Alright. Stream. So, what are we looking at? Well, it's that dimension again. It's that number 5 in my test world here, the one I was doing meteors in. You can see some tile entities down there, but no particles, which is a bit strange. But the interesting thing about it is it's not really there. It's a portal render to that dimension. Like I said on Twitter, I finally got this working. Thank you, iTunes. Chat, you so funny. All right. So that's a thing. This is built into Slidercraft. Slidercraft is, as I announced a little bit earlier, another mod I'm going to be working on. It's designed to, it's designed around the idea of the TV show Sliders, which, if you don't know the show, then it's basically the point of the mod is that you'll have a device that has a countdown timer, and when that counts down, or when it reaches its countdown, it can activate a portal, and this portal will take you to a random dimension. So it's going to be an add-on to Mystcraft. It's going to use the Mystcraft generation mechanics in order to generate new dimensions. And yeah, so that's the main reason I built the recycling system into Mystcraft on Monday. Is we'll be able to then say, okay, give me a new dimension. All right, here's the dimension. All right, I'm done with this dimension. Give me a new one. And it can recycle the old dimension IDs. What will probably happen is it'll cycle between 2 dimension IDs. Slidercraft will basically use 2 dimensions. But it will mooch off Mystcraft to provide those dimensions. Mystcraft will handle the registration and all that. So Slidercraft basically just goes, here's a world. This is my world. I might actually make it so that you can have multiple devices in the game, so this device links to this world, and it has things going on. So yeah, that's the idea, anyway. One of the things is, I'd like real portals. There we go. Real portal, sort of. At the moment, it's just the render. If I walk through it, I just wind up where I am. That makes sense. It doesn't go anywhere. It just renders that. The making it go somewhere is not terribly complicated. We'll be able to have a party. That's the point of the portal. So you don't have to link with a... the link device creates a portal, and the portal stays open for a few minutes. and then once it closes, you're done. But that's the point of the portal, that you'll be able to have other people around. It's not a single person link. Here's a good question. Are there events for the creation and recycling of ages? Creation of ages, maybe. Recycling, I haven't added one. I can add a event for this dimension got recycled. It might be a good idea to do so. Will the world start to degrade, like I assume the world you're in, start to degrade when a new portal is opened? Can be done. Wasn't really part of the original plan, but could be done. Will fun include horizontal portals that you could fall through? Or have to fall through? Maybe. The portal technologies is something I'm going to try. I'm going to try and build it into other things. At the moment, I've been using Slidercraft as the test environment for this particular piece of technology. So what this is, again, thank you, iTunes. What this is it uses a stencil buffer to say I'm going to render this area, and then it renders to, basically just swaps location to the other world and then renders that. So if we didn't have a stencil buffer, you'd see that world as if we were standing in it relative to that location. It would look exactly like we're in that world, because for all intents and purposes in terms of rendering, it'd be the world. It is a mid-render render, which produces some interesting things, but it only took a couple days to get it to work. Does it have the same bugs as Doors does? Yes. In that the main bug that Doors has is that if you place... So, let's say that in that world there was a... some blocks here. Right? Yep, that got interesting. Let's put them there. Clearly that entity moved. Alright, so let's say that there were these blocks there in that world. When I moved around, they'd render on that spot. So you'll be able to see things that are on this side of that slice plane. Does that make sense? That's obviously not desired. The thing we need to accomplish first, in order to fix that, basically we want a near plane culling thing, so that the frustum needs to be aware that things closer than that point need to be culled. It's just a matter of building the frustum to do it. I've started doing that, but I haven't completely taken apart the frustum to figure out exactly how it works in Minecraft, because it's a little funny. So I'll have to play with that some. We'll get there. Is it less laggy than Doors? Maybe. I don't know. It renders basically the same way as Doors. In fact, the render for the world is taken from Doors. So it's probably the same laggy. Because... And that's the part that I keep thanking iTunes for. That basically, he did the render to world stuff, and I came through and I changed some of it. But, yeah, it's the same. There's a few things I need to fix for it, for this still. But the basic technology is in, so I'm happy. Alright. Yeah, I could try and make iBlock access not return any blocks during rendering for a certain area. That's a possibility. But I think render culling might be a more correct way to do that. But I don't see any lag doing this. So unless you're running this on a toaster, you'll probably be fine. If you're running it on a toaster, you just have to turn it off. It is a second render. It's gonna take time, but there shouldn't be any particular lag to it because it's just one extra render. If you're rendering really slowly to begin with, like if you only ever get 20 frames a second normally, then this is gonna cut you down a few frames. Wow, I haven't seen that combination of characters to produce a face before. That was interesting. So anyway, toasters. That is my personal reinterpretation of that text. If you're running out of toaster, pop the toast. Yes. All right, so that's that thing. That's what I wanted to show you for Slidercraft, basically. I don't have any of the give me a world stuff in. I don't have any of the teleportation, though honestly it'd be really easy to just go pop. Same thing as a TPX. So I hit this and go bam. You can do that. And this is honestly more laggy than it was just because it's loading. Why is LookingGlass's loading faster than Minecraft's? And what is going on with the sky? Oh, the weather was cycling really fast. That was interesting. Right then. So yeah. Yeah, the rendering of blocks is probably 16 by 16 by 16 chunks, isn't it? Because it builds, I know it builds a thing in advance and then only updates it every now and then, so the culling of that may be funny, but we'll see. I just assume... No, this is not flat. Certainly not flat. So is that a no seas river flat skyland? It's frozen river. You got that. There was a second biome there, wasn't there? Where was that? No, it was just light values changing. Alright, so it's frozen river, skylands. I don't know if it's a no seas. Might be. That would make sense, given there's no water. Yeah, I was using this to test my meteors. I think the main thing I wrote in was obsidian tendrils, because I wanted those. Will Slidercraft be open source? Probably. One of the things I'm thinking of using Slidercraft for is as a... there was a lot of very few letter words there. Is as a... basically a reference mod. So you can see these APIs in action and how to use them. Still don't understand what Slidercraft does. It's based on sliders. I explained it at the beginning, but you probably missed it. Slidercraft is basically you have a device and it teleports you to random dimensions. That's what it does. It has a timer, so it only works during when that timer has reached its countdown and for a window after that. And then once that window, or you open the portal lasts for a few minutes. Once it closes, you're trapped forever. Or at least until the dimension gets recycled or something, I don't know. So yeah. Yeah, it's fine. Don't worry about the... I did explain it very quickly after we started, so lots of people probably missed it. Okay. Let's see here. So that's pretty much that. I'm going to be working on, or towards this. Slidercraft's probably not going to hit this week. Maybe next week. Maybe. I have not next week. I have a choir contest next weekend. So Slidercraft probably will not hit then. Is the dimension from Slidercraft always stable? Mostly. Oh, key bounce, no. Alright, so that's that. That's what I wanted to show you for that one. Let's go work on Mystcraft API. Actually, which API should we work on? Because in order for the Slidercraft stuff to work, we need to build some Mystcraft API in order... It already can give you a dimension, but it's really very bare bones. You basically just go, create an age, and that's it. There's no way to release the age. There's no way to control what's in it, to ban certain things. Like Slidercraft will want to prevent you from having terribly unstable symbols, and it will try to... It will definitely want to ban... what are they called? Starfishers? Because we don't want you teleporting home in the middle of a Slidercraft thing. That's the whole gimmick. But did you answer the most important question? How is the milkshake? The milkshake is fantastic. Banana? But for my ice cream, I used the chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream from Ben & Jerry's. Lots of fun. Very tasty. All right. Because it was a bad episode, Keybounce. Or at least there's a terrible idea. I think there are more important questions, like, where is the vacuum cleaner? Hiding. And then, TARDIS, question mark. Oh. TARDIS? You betcha! I actually don't remember the episode, Keybounce, so the episode itself might have been good, but that idea is terrible. Just because by that point the series was going... Slidercraft was not... Or Sliders was not always fantastic. The first 2 seasons were fun. Third was still pretty good. And I didn't see all of them even then. People keep going, TARDIS? Yes, I guess. I'm just going to say yes. Alright, so let's look at the LookingGlass API. Look at the LookingGlass. Yes. This new rendering ability would make the entrance to a TARDIS much more feasible. Yes. I believe that's why people keep going, TARDIS? Alright, so, at the moment, the LookingGlass API has 2 functions, which is why I have not released it. The most important functions are there. At least the most important function is there. And it returns the most important object in LookingGlass, which I haven't put any commenting on, apparently. Let's do that. Because I can explain them and comment them at the same time. It'd be a good idea. So there's 2 functions here that right. So I changed that around. That are paired, grab and release. When you first get the object, especially if you plan on having several things reference the object, let's give a concrete example. We have a camera mod, and this camera mod creates views, or a view to a specific location. It has a camera object that is there, and it wants to view that location. And then in order to render it on screens, they need to grab that view object, or need to get a view object for that space. You can have, on the client side, a lookup to see if you already have a view object for that camera. If you do, you can just reuse it. Clearly, you want to make it so you keep track of it based on whatever. But the biggest thing is, if we want to have several different places where we hold on to it, then we need to grab it for each of those locations. And then when we're done with it in that location, we release it. When all locations release it, it basically kills itself. The main reason this exists is so that the views can release their frame buffers and such things as this. It's also going to allow the view to clean itself up otherwise and inform the server I'm no longer a thing. So this would basically allow them to function intelligently. The main reason this exists this way is because Java's resource allocation stuff in general doesn't provide us a better way. The same thing for you have to close file handles manually. You have to release these manually. I'm thinking, I've got a design for something in my head that can detect leaked world views and try and clean them up. But I haven't implemented it yet. I'm not sure if it's going to work, so we'll see. But yes, so right, something like that. So the main thing here is that a grab will increment a counter, and release will decrement the counter, and when the counter reaches 0 or less, then it is marked as dead. So Sliders are from Doctor Who? No, Sliders is a TV show from some time ago. There is a TARDIS project, and I'm already helping with it, sort of. People say large things. I can't read really large things in chat. It takes too long. Can you call it retain instead of grab? No, because grab and release makes sense, and it's very standard. It is the standard for this pattern. All right, so increment internal counter is kind of a relevant thing to include, but grab. Okay. Does it matter how many times you call grab and or release? Does it matter how... Okay, so for that question, sort of. You can grab it as many times as you like, but you must release it that many times or more. or it won't get cleaned up properly. Keybout says retain release is as old as next step one open step. Yes, but those are also really old terms. The same thing, we don't use father and son anymore for nodes and trees. We've moved past the 50s. the terms have changed, but these are the standard terms now. The internal reference counter just counts how many references to said view there are according to the view object. Yeah, it's based on grabs and releases. It's just a cleanup paradigm. It's pretty normal. If this were C++, I'd have something more intelligent. I wouldn't make the user of the object responsible for reference counting, because that's a little annoying. But any toy? Did I time it wrong? Toy, yeah. Any time you want. It's one letter offset. But yeah, I would make the reference counting done by the object itself if I could, but since Java doesn't allow for things like that, can do. Running multi-block structure API, and wanted your input on things required to be useful to as many structure implications as possible. Don't look at me. I've used multi-blocks once in a mod I haven't released publicly, and they weren't that hard to build. And I'm actually planning on replacing them all with entities. So I have no particular thoughts on multi-blocks. Alright, this is the magic function here, getTexture. So what getTexture means is it returns the texture ID as used by OpenGL and as created by OpenGL that we will render for our whatever, our camera screen in our concrete example here. So the texture ID for rendering the view in OpenGL. Maybe we'll change that around. The OpenGL texture ID, which makes more sense, for rendering the view. Okay. This, every time you render the texture, that's not really quite right. This needs to be called in order for how to say this. Basically, the point of this function is that LookingGlass will not bother rendering views that are not marked dirty. So if you are perfectly happy with a static render, you can just not mark it dirty and render that texture again and again and again and again. It'd be fine. So needs to be called to request LookingGlass re-render the view to the texture. Of course, the first one's free. And then is ready. This will be activated once the view has chunks and is ready to render. The view has been rendered. True if view has been rendered to the texture. Now I'm actually going to let's go to the tick. What did I call it? What did I call it? What is the max size a Mystcraft portal can be? There isn't one. There isn't. The size of a Minecraft world, I guess. Could LookingGlass be used for manipulation of the player camera, including rotation on all axis and orbiting the camera onto point? LookingGlass's primary purpose is to render other worlds. If you want to do weird camera manipulation stuff on the local world player, then LookingGlass isn't even going to be useful, I'm afraid. Can you tell when a reference is no longer valid, when the weak reference is found in reference classes? Sort of. I'm planning on using weak references to determine when the object goes away, and then I'm going to make it so that the world view, the stuff that needs to be cleaned up for world views, is often a separate object that the world view just references. That way, when the world view ceases to be a thing, we can kind of go, okay, well, this doesn't exist anymore, clean up this stuff. That's the idea. We'll see if it works, because I'm not sure if detecting that something is gone is going to be quite so easy to do. Okay. Alright. Does the Slidercraft rendering mean it can do entities? I haven't been able to test it, because there's no entities in the world I'm rendering. And the entities are not synced by LookingGlass, so not there. Theoretically, yes, and I might have it disabled at the moment, in fact, because I have some things cut out from the rendering at the moment, because I didn't want to do some access transform stuff. But yeah. Are you sure there's no max size? I didn't make a max size, so there is no max size, aside from implicit max sizes, such as how big your server can handle before it lags out. If you're having trouble firing up a portal, you've probably built it incorrectly. Which is really easy to do, to be fair. So I was trying to look at the... Let's just... So there's actually a world view under this, and let's look at where that's set, because that's what I want to do. Oh, okay. So I need to change that. That was a quick solution, but I need to do something better. Actually, let's do it this way. World references is ready. Okay, just those places. So that's not entirely true, though. Probably need a two-step check. So one of the things is that we definitely want to make sure that we have chunks before we mark it as ready. We'd also kind of like to make sure that there is a render of that. But it apparently starts rendering before we have chunks, because I've not bothered to prevent it from doing so. So if is ready. No. If has chunks and mark clean. Alright, so let's break this apart some. Has chunks. Come down here and set this to true, and then make ready, or make ready. Okay, there we go. And now, ready's not set anywhere. We want ready to be set here. So now when we mark it clean the first time, it will be set to true, and every time thereafter, it will just be set to true again. Alright. The world preview doesn't render when shaders aren't supported. Should? I wonder if I'm checking something in there somewhere that's a leftover. So, alright. Commenting is done. Yay, commenting. Okay, so render to texture. This is kind of the magic and one of the messiest things. So if shaders are not supported, is that on Mystcraft or in LookingGlass windows themselves held? Because held says that the world preview doesn't render when shaders aren't supported. The problem with this is that this hole's very small. Alright. So it's just in the Mystcraft panels. Alright, I can look at it. If they're not supported, it should render. I thought I had things for that, but I'll double check it, of course. Alright, so okay. In that case, we won't look here. You can see various hacks and things I've put in order to handle rendering things properly, whatever. I found some ways around that now, so I might actually be able to fix that. Okay, yeah. So I think that's pretty much the two main things in the LookingGlass API itself. So if we open up the API source code here, this is kind of the root of the API. It is the same as in Mystcraft. This is my API instance provider. So what this does, and the way this works, is you request a instance of this via IMC. And the reason you don't just request an instance of the API directly is this allows for some more robust things. Basically, as long as this object doesn't change, which there's no reason for this object to change, and this interface to change, then you are not going to crash out on any API changes when other API things change. So there's actually example code here. The example is to call FML intermod comms send message LookingGlass, or to LookingGlass here, send the message API, and then the string is just this. And I just used what I would use. So Mystcraft has this call, Mystcraft here. So in init, I create this IMC message, and I pass in this. And this is a class, and register is a function. So you pass in the function, complete with class path. It has to be a static function, otherwise we can't call it. And it needs to take an instance of API instance provider as its only argument. or parameter if you prefer that word. But I learned some Klingon programming at one point, and Klingons only use arguments. And they win them all. Bad programming joke. So, yeah, all this does, in the Mystcraft case, what this does is I start up my shaders, because I don't use shaders without LookingGlass. I can move this around later on if I start using shaders to do other things, but at the moment I just init shaders there. I create a listener for a specific event, which we'll look at in a minute, and then get alpha API, which basically just kind of moves this over here. So this is the second half of these things here. So we have here the request handling stuff. So this function basically allows us to request an instance, an API instance of whatever type by string identifier. So if we were to request, say, the symbol API at version 1, we would pass in that. It would, of course, be this, like this. So maybe I should use that. And then it actually has 3 possibilities for exceptions. There is API undefined. So if you request the symbol API, it's going to go, I have no idea what you're talking about, and throw that particular exception. And then API version undefined. So if we request symbol 6, but the only version of the symbol, the highest version of the symbol API in that version of, well, this is for Mystcraft here, but in, say, Mystcraft had symbol, or the version of Mystcraft running in the instance you're on only has up to symbol 5. It's going to throw the exception API version undefined. So basically you're trying to use a version of the API that is newer than what the instance in which you're running knows of. Chat comments, either chat died or everyone is listening very carefully to XCompWiz. Hill responded immediately, he has the voice. Alright, so yeah, if the API you're requesting is newer than what the instance has, you'll get this exception. And the last exception is API version removed. So if you request the symbol 1, so symbol API at version 1, but the instance in which we're running no longer supports that version of the API. Say something came out and just changed everything. Then that version of the API, or maybe it's just like 20 versions old and keeping it around is silly. So if that version of the API just doesn't exist anymore, you'll get this exception. So I actually commented these exceptions down here briefly. If the API is undefined, the API requested doesn't exist, give up the nice log message. One of the nice things about a log message is you can go, oh, the symbol API doesn't exist. Oops. The other one, or the next one, is if the version is undefined, the API requested exists, but the version we wanted is missing in the local environment, we can try falling back to an older version. So one option is you can try it, say we move forward and we're now we get to the point where we can request LookingGlass 1 and then go, LookingGlass 1 doesn't exist, can't find that. We can fall back on, or maybe we get to the point where LookingGlass 2. We get to the point where LookingGlass 2 doesn't exist in this instance. It's an older version of LookingGlass. Then we go, okay, well, is there LookingGlass 1? I can do some things with that at least. So yeah. XComp, you look really long. Do you mean young? Thin or tall? stretched. All right, so I have this built into a function for getting the alpha API. This is what LookingGlass is providing at the moment, alpha-1. Thank you, Shams. So we can request this, and now I can go. I can copy this and say get LookingGlass API 1, and it'll look. It will get. Actually, let's call it something else. What are we going to call this main API, the worldview API? So at the moment, I'm just going to call it view. Get view API 1. So we can do that, and then. If the version of API we request doesn't exist, give up with a nice log message. In this particular case, the way I've done this was probably ill thought out. So we're going to do this. Okay. So this is the way I'm doing this. And then we get we'll get the view. If we fail, if it doesn't exist, we'll fall back to the alpha API. And if that fails, then everything's just falling apart. Young. Yeah, I thought so. Yes, I know. Alright. So one of the things is that this should now become view 1 here. So I've actually moved the casting for the object into its own class. And the reason for this is that, and that's on my handling side. And the reason for this is this way the first reference to iLookingGlass API is here. Now, when that changes around, or if iLookingGlass API just ceases to exist, then we don't have to worry about it crashing on cast failures or trying to include things that don't exist and things like that. When forming up the class information, we never load this class unless we can get an instance of the alpha API, in which case we're guaranteed this interface exists. So yeah. All right. So we'd want LookingGlass integration view 1. Now, I'm not actually going to do this way. In that when I really release the API, I'm just going to get rid of the alpha API. So the current standing versions of LookingGlass will be useful for the current standing versions of Mystcraft, but after a little bit, they just won't sync together anymore. So at some point, we'll get to the thing where the API is actually forward and backward compatible. At the moment, I haven't released it yet, so that's only pseudo-valuable. Okay. Let's see here. Right, the other thing I wanted to talk about is this event handler here. So if I look over to this side, I can see that I actually have a world info event, or client world info event. And despite the name, kind of makes me think maybe the name's really bad. this event is called server side. It's when the client gets world info from the server. And this is useful if you want to, say, send the data about that dimension to the client. Which Mystcraft wants to do, otherwise the weather in the dimension will be wrong. And rendering will look silly. Not to mention the sun and moon and everything will be wrong. Yummy. Alright. So, that's what I do here. I check to see if the world exists, and then I see if it's a Mystcraft age, and if it is, then I send the age data for that dimension. See, packet age data. Get data packet for dimension. Send. And that's all this does. Like in this class, this is the Mystcraft LookingGlass event handler. It is inside of Mystcraft. The event itself is, of course, inside of LookingGlass. It's in the API. Alright, and then we've already looked at iWorldView. So let's comment this real quick. Called the server side to allow mods to send dimension information to clients. There is a failing of this event in that if you send the information you're sending has to basically be global. Mystcraft age data is it works like map data. Is the event called before any other data is sent? I don't remember. When is the event called? It is called these two locations, and it's right before... Yes, it's basically the first information sent, I think. It should be. I don't suppose you have any code lying around that generates spheres or domes in Minecraft. I have a sphere symbol. It generates spheres. It doesn't generate hollow spheres very well. If you're looking at Minecraft, the caves generate spheres. It's just lots and lots of... Actually, it generates ellipsoids, which is probably more useful in general. But the caves generates ellipsoids at whatever position. You can control the ellipsoid, make it a sphere. But it's really hard to do hollow spheres that way. Alright, so yeah, the first event is called before any error information about the other dimension is sent to the client. And yeah, the failing at the moment is that there's no way to send directly to that dimension as if you would update the time normally. You cannot treat it as if that's the world on the dimension, or on the client, which is probably for the best, but I'm sure some people will want to be able to just send data and it be processed by that world object. I have some thoughts of how to do network traffic when the other worlds are loaded, but I haven't tried doing that yet. Alright, so... Did I finish commenting that that event? Sort of. Call the server side to allow mods to send dimension information to clients. That'll work. Alright. So that's how that works. And that's how I've been doing that. Alright. I should really get some other modders in here real quick. Or at least as fast as I possibly can. Because I need to discuss what API things are going to be useful or necessary or so forth. Alright, so let's try sending a message. I'm streaming and would like your input. All right. So that's how this works. One of the things I know I've been saying that it'd probably be ideas is the API instance provider doesn't change. But as long as this function doesn't change or go away, it's fine. The interface can gain new features. It's okay. XCompWiz, your brother is Soren, right? Yes. Still. So I might consider adding a function to the API instance provider to provide a list of all APIs it can provide. Right. And at what versions. That might be useful to know. Both from a programmatic standpoint and when you're testing things with the API and learning how it works, it might be nice to be able to pull that information out somehow. So I will think about that. I might do that. Alright, so alright, I've already got that function would be nice, so let's do that. Public, I'm not sure how I'm going to handle the data structure for it though. Public map string set integer get available APIs when you talk to Soren normally, do you call him by his actual name? Yes. Most of the time, anyway. If you could think of doing something, or if you could think of something that could give information and it's simple to do, do it. There's no drawbacks to doing it. Mostly, yeah. The main drawback to doing it in this context is that I then have to support it forever. But yes. List, or rather, collection, collection. Yes, really, we are siblings. Returns a collection of all available API by name and what versions are supported in this environment. This actually could allow people to do some more proactive detection of what APIs are available rather than falling back, which is probably a good thing anyway. API names, and their available versions. Okay, save this, and now it's going to complain. That doesn't exist. You're missing a function. Okay, now it's down here. So, the way I've implemented this internally is I have a... so, basically it's all down here. Init. We add a constructor. Held points out, take their pictures, put them side by side. You will recognize that Soren and XComp are brothers. There's a picture of us sitting side by side making very similar faces. We weren't intentionally making similar faces, we were just streaming together. So yes. Alright. So the way this works here is there's an API constructors thing that builds wrappers. So I say we're going to call this one alpha at version 1, and we use this particular wrapper to build that. So then does this and puts it in here under this API name, which might mean I need to do some other things to support this here. I'm going to have to say there is this version at this number, but that's okay. I can just build some more information here. Hash map, hash set, API versions, and then in order to keep people from messing with it, because we don't want people messing with it, we're going to have a constant version of it. So equals API versions public. There we go. Import hash set. Let's call it immutable. There we go. That's better. Okay. So now let's put API name. We're going to do something slightly more complicated than this. We have to basically replicate this function. Hash set. Get versions. Set, and then place that with that. Versions equals new hash set. Integer. Wait. That would still allow them to modify those sets internally. That's not good. So this is slightly more complicated, even still. API versions equals new hash map, or no, this is a hash set. Okay. And then the immutable one equals collections dot unmodifiable API versions. Cannot convert from map. Right, so it doesn't need to be a hash map anymore. It just needs to be set. So that's fine. Ha. It's so picky. Alright, we'll simplify it for you. Java's really picky, especially for something that completely gets stripped out later on. And that's just a map. Put... Alright, so there we go. Held player is correct that the version of the API name that we're requesting here is alpha, and the version of it is 1. So I could have an alpha 2, for instance. This alpha 2 builds the same API, so it wouldn't really make a difference. But I could also do that. Now I have a view API that the API provider provides. At least the class is well named, I guess. Programming produces some interesting sentences. One of the usual problems with the synthesis it does create is that there's, if you've programmed in Java or C++ or anything with a class concept, then you've probably encountered the keyword this. The keyword this makes a lot of sentences very complicated. Because I'll say, so this is this, or things like that. I run into some really strange sentences sometimes. The things we can do with this. Alright. So that equals that. And then while we're doing this, see? Put API name, except that's immutable. I can't put that. Thing is, I can pull out the set and then modify the set. XCOM. What games are you looking forward to within the next 12 to 16 months, and would you ever do modding for any other game? I've done modding for other games. Would I modify other games? as heavily as Minecraft? I don't know. Maybe. As for what games am I looking forward to in the next 12 to 16 months? I don't think I have anything that far out. Like, at the moment I have all the games that I've been looking forward to. Most of the things I've been looking forward to were early access, and I have them. I'm looking forward to them getting cooler, neat new things and whatnot, but I'm not particularly looking forward to the release anymore because I have copies of them. So yeah, okay, so I've got a problem here in that I cannot simply give away this map, because if I give away this map, then they can pull out the set and modify the set. And while generally, yes, why would anybody come through and mess with it? I want to make it so they can't. Because I'd rather set people up to not fail. You need to make a separate map to back the data of the immutable map, in which you can put immutable sets that are backed by the real sets. That's a good solution, thank you, Held. Alright, so immutable sets. Right then. Right, so that's how we'll do that. And then put API name and then collections unmodifiable set. I missed it. Set versions. Okay. There's still an error somewhere. Oh, because it's trying to return a hash map. It's just a map now. Okay. Better not cache the immutable map. Alright, so and then I can just return this. Work done. Rather than build it every time and then return that. Pardon me, I'm going to sneeze. Thank you. So, rather than rebuild the map every time somebody wants it, I just have a copy of it I can share with people. Yeah, I got the idea when you said it, Held, and I can't open the link right now. Alright, so get versions by API name, add I need to separate this out some. So register API alpha 1 okay, create method, and then this will do two things. It will string I, oops, put I, pit. I cannot type today. That's not conducive to typing. Add cast to method receiver? It's add, isn't it? There we go. There we go. That was a really unhelpful intelligent synth thing. I'm going to sneeze. Slowly leaves the screen. I had an early warning. Sometimes you don't know until but moments before. Sometimes you feel that tickle a good minute in advance. And then replace all this. Alright, now let's rename these. Builder version PI name. There we go. So what this does, well, hopefully it's fairly obvious. But we register the API, say that this all exists, and we mark the version. We have the constructor. When we mark the version, it gets kind of weird because we get the API versions thing. We then get that. If it's null, then we have to create it. So we do here. At which point we put the created list or created set in both in two different maps. The first map is the one that we use for keeping track of the list so we can modify them. The second map just keeps unmodifiable references to the sets. And those unmodifiable references to the sets, or that map, has an immutable form, which is here and returned over here, so that we can have an unmodifiable reference to those sets. Java did not make that easy, but at least made it possible. Okay, so that's a thing. That'll be fun. Alright, so now that function exists. Get available APIs, it will tell you about the available APIs, and we'll be all set to go. At the moment it's just alpha at version 1. We need to change that. And that is what we were doing today. Yes, I have 3 different maps in order to store what version numbers and APIs exist. But it's still more efficient than building it every time, as long as at least one person requests it. It's less complicated, or it's more complicated than building it every time, but... Alright. Let's see here. So that's done, and that's done, and let's play with this. Now, for Mystcraft, the LookingGlass API is done. Mystcraft doesn't need anything else from the LookingGlass API right now, which is part of why I started working on Slidercraft. And better yet, they all store the same identical format. They don't store copies of it, though. They're all referencing the same things. So the data is not replicated, which is fine. That's good. Peddler says, I would have returned a string array with the full name version. I'd rather not. I suppose that would work too. An unmodifiable set of all available things. Yeah, each one has more immutability added to it. Until the last one cannot be changed at all. It is set in its ways. But you can rip the floorboards out from under it. Alright. So yeah, Mystcraft is happy with the LookingGlass API as it stands. Perfectly fine. No problems whatsoever. The so yeah, I started working on Slidercraft to see what else would have to be built into LookingGlass, the LookingGlass API specifically, in order to handle things better. But for the most part, it's just been one other thing. Basically, I'd want a way, or for the rendering at least, I'd want a way to render that world right now live from this position and things like that. How exactly I'm going to build that particular thing, I don't know yet, but I'm going to build it either as a function, or I'm going to build it as some kind of API function. So, and as we've already kind of demonstrated, I can add functions to an API fairly freely. And then in order to keep track of whether or not a function exists, I can increment the counter. That's not it. API provider implementation. I can just do this and go, if you can get that version, the function exists, but not actually have to create a new instance of the interface and so forth. So that'd work. Except anytime you try to use that function, of course, it would crash, things like that. So I've actually been thinking of making it its own API object. So you request that separately. And basically have that be a separate system. It can change however it needs to change and evolve over time. And this would basically just be the request view API. One of the things that's really just kind of, it's here, doesn't really do anything, is the, it does something, but it's pretty lame. The set pivot animation basically just tells the world view, rotate, which is what Mystcraft does. I have no real idea exactly how I want to handle that in a more generic fashion. I probably want to try and set it up so you can build your own animators. So maybe we'll play with that. Shy that, I'll just remove this. Or I can't really remove this one because Mystcraft needs it somewhere. But we'll build some version of that now, and that'll be good. So yeah, we're going to change this to the iView API. Actually, let's make it the iWorldView API to be consistent. Okay. And then we're going to play around with our animation systems. All right. Somebody... XComp Wiz can't spell target. Did I misspell target somewhere? Target. Did I misspell it somewhere? I misspelled. I can't do spell target. I spelled target correctly 4 times out of 5. Hi, XComp Wiz. Why are you still using the Eclipse IDE? Because it works? I have no particular desire to change. It works fine. Held was saying, somebody actually made an interesting question earlier. Did your changes to make the rendering look better in world affect how it renders the link panel? I didn't change anything in LookingGlass to do that. I did access some things directly in LookingGlass, so Slidercraft at the moment doesn't use API calls to do that. But I didn't use anything, or I didn't change anything in LookingGlass in order to support that. So, nope, didn't affect Mystcraft panels at all. if I were to try and do that in Mystcraft, like for the Mystcraft linking panels, it'd be expensive. I wouldn't want to bother. That method's slightly more prone to error as well. Yeah, I know. It accessed the internals directly. That's terrible. Shouldn't do that. But at the same time, it's a prototype. So...
Prototype, yes.
Yes! Hello, T-Love.
Did you not see me come in?
No, I have notifications and everything off. When did you arrive?
Just like a few seconds ago. But yeah,
Alright.
I have the same thing, so no one ever knows if even know if anyone comes in.
Yep.
Hello.
Hello. How are you?
I can't seem to get on Mcraft because something's wrong with the workshop.
Oh.
I'm in the workshop dimension and it's like, nope, can't come on.
Yep. Well, I'm working with the LookingGlass API.
What are you doing? Like adding things or doing fancy things?
Not a whole lot of fancy things. I demonstrated the fanciest thing earlier. That was the Slidercraft portals.
Mm-hmm.
But T-Love Tech is very loud. All right.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll speak softly now.
You're fine. I just turned you down. Is that better, chat? Hopefully.
Hopefully, yes, please. There.
But yeah, I'm easy to derail today. That's not what I was saying, but it's true. All right, so yeah, the fanciest thing was I demonstrated basically a portal render as per Portal, the game / the Minecraft mod. Did renders for other locations, and it looked like you could really just walk there and whatever. I've got that working now in a prototype mod called Slidercraft, which I'll release in some short span of time, a couple weeks. But the API for LookingGlass needs to kind of improve a bit first. My username and the XCOM games are completely unrelated. In that my username is X as in random character, comp as in computer, whiz as in wizard. It sounds kind of silly when you spell it out like that, honestly.
Yeah, well, people get on me about T-Love Tech. He's like, you love tech so much, then why do you play with magic mods? Like, yeah, my name does not have to do with Minecraft. Try to remember that. It does not have to do with Minecraft.
So yeah, it's just kind of... Yeah. This is the name. I came up with XComp was ages ago. The name is old. So, yeah.
How many ages? Like age 1 or age 2? Oh.
Maybe my microphone is quiet. I could try and fix that.
Yeah, well, hold on. Am I still too loud?
No, I think you're fine. People were just kind of commenting that they're not sure that...
Yeah, I'm loud.
that it's not just my...
Oh, wow.
Hello. Yeah, the microphone's pretty quiet here. I'm gonna... Hello. Far over misty mountains cold, to dungeons deep
And caverns old.
caverns old, we must away ere break of day to find our long forgotten gold. Is this doing anything?
Oh gosh, that probably was really loud after I just laughed.
I think that might be the headphone volume on the microphone. So probably not. Let's look at the back. The gain of the microphone is pretty normal there. Held? Your username is from Age of Empires?
Held player?
Held player.
Hmm.
I don't understand the reference. But I loved Age of Empires 2, so please explain. Alright, so let's look at recording devices and figure out why my microphone gain is so low.
Maybe I can turn my volume down.
At this
Okay.
point, it's not so bad.
That's not me.
I don't think it's you.
Ooh.
Maybe a little bit. Let's see. Speak a little bit real quick. Yeah,
Test,
you're
test, test. Okay.
You're
Well,
loud.
It's kind of funny. I have this like same problem. Like I'm soft in my videos and Fireball's like super loud. I don't understand. Why would I be?
Alright, let's see here.
I'll just put myself push to talk and just be
Testing.
shush. I'll just be shush.
Testing. Is this really getting anywhere? Hello, hello. Okay, I don't think this modifies live, so... I'm gonna try setting this to this. Okay. Alright, is that better? I can't imagine it being worse. Alright. No, stream volume has not really changed at all. Okay. I don't know. Let's look at the audio and... My mic volume is up all the way. Let's try playing with the actual device here. Is that better? Hello? Maybe?
You want me to test or you?
I mean, did it sound louder to you?
My side, I guess a little, but I haven't tested the stream. Hold on.
No, it's not going to be any different between the stream and you. So am I getting louder? Is this good?
I don't know. Your stream's frozen for me for some reason.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just on TeamSpeak. Okay, so yeah, it's getting better. Good.
Yeah, you sound fine to me.
All right, we'll go with this. Okay,
Yeah,
so let's see here.
Okay, cool.
Clipping a tiny bit. I'm going to turn it down just a tad then. All right. So I just turned up the gain on the back of the mic.
That works.
Yep. All right, so let's see here. Right, so I'm playing with animations. That's what I want to do. Let's go here, and all this function's doing here. Alright, so I'm gonna... Oh yeah, I turned that up a lot. Alright, we're just gonna have to live with this, I think.
I'll just try not to talk often.
I can turn you down more, I guess.
Yeah, you can do that. I brought
try and-
problems when I just came in here.
Alright, so you should be quieter now.
Test, test, 1, 2, test, test.
Yeah.
Just sounded like a lightsaber came on stream. Vroom.
I wish. Oh, I know what it was. I rotated my microphone, and as it rotated on the table, it kind of produced a friction sound, kind of thing. And that resonating through the microphone, of course, produced a very interesting sound.
Very nice.
I can replicate it if chat likes.
Vroom, just doing that.
Whoom, whoom, whoom. Alright, so... Alright. So this is what this function is doing. It's adding an animator, which is... just extends this interface. I haven't really hammered out all the details. Please do replicate the sound. Alright. So I haven't hammered out the details, which is why it's not part of the API, but it needs to be part of the API for this function to be meaningful. The entity animator pivot probably also needs to be pulled out to be in the API so that other things can use it.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is I'm referencing subchunks down here. That's not good. Oh, probably just remove this section. Let's try it and find out. Okay. Have you tried to get a sub button yet? No. I guess I could,
You could.
but I haven't bothered. Kind of like, am I really? Would anybody actually? I don't stream near often enough to make that worthwhile, I don't think. Alright, this world. The portal from Slidercraft is going to close because Slidercraft is not loaded. So we won't get the fancy portal niceness. Maybe I should have just loaded with the fancy portal niceness. But, yeah, see. No more portal. It died! Oh, whoa. Yeah, so...
Oh.
Let's look here. Looks good. Also looks good. Looks like I can safely remove that particular if statement. We'll be fine. This looks a lot like the... Oh, that's age 5. Hey! That's age 5 too. How do I have 2 age books that are age 5? Doo. I do have a command that creates age books, so that's probably how. How many pages are in this one? Just one. And in this one, just one. This world has diamonds. Or at least so the name claims. I don't see any in there. Diamonds 2. Presumably because Diamonds 1 wasn't good enough. These worlds are pretty old. Can't see Minecraft! Yeah! Okay. So, quick rehash. Looks fine. Looks fine. It's H5 again. Diamonds 1. I don't think that's diamonds, that's a quartz, or that's a crystal. And then diamonds 2. So yeah, if statement was not necessary. It's so cool with all those particles. Okay. So yeah. But removes fine. Alright, so now I could probably move this over into the API happily. Let's sort this out a bit. So refresh and update, and updates on the entity. Right, so that's the main problem here. I think that the constructor requires the entity and nothing outside of that has the entity. So let's move that around. Entity. You can make an animation factory that you use to create implemented animators. That's a possibility. The thing is, it's kind of backwards, because if you want to be able to yeah, you'd have to implement something that basically you'd get the entity object, you could build around it, and then send it in. Yeah, if you create an age and then try to look at it through the link panel, nothing will show up. It will be black until you link. I think. Should be black. I don't know what it shows, actually. I should double check that. Okay. Because the animator is definitely built around a specific case, so the target can change is one of the things. So let's pull that back. So I may actually need to do the factory route. How to make this work? Because I'd like to make it so that people create their own animators for the panels, or for their views. So what information do they need in order to do that? How can I supply them with it? So forth. They do need the entity position. But an animator, at least as I've implemented it here, the animator is bound to the entity. It's a one-to-one relationship because it keeps track of where the camera entity is supposed to be positioned. Its target location is here. So this is the point that it's looking at. So if we go up, sets the look at target. A target. Okay. You can make interfaces for the objects, like entity. I could make it so you could get access, like an interface to the camera thing and be able to pull information, send information to it. Because that's what the animator does anyway here. It needs to be able to do that. At the same time, I'd like to be careful with what I allow people to do, so maybe it actually is a good idea to create an interface for the camera object. And then expose that so that people can animate the camera however they like. Within things for moving and locations. Yeah, I'll do that way. And I'll actually make it a wrapper so that it contains the entity to try and deter people from converting it, like casting it to an entity and doing more complicated things. Or I could just use entity and not care. What do you think, D-Love?
I think that'd be a good idea.
Because actually anything they do it's really out of the bounds of the camera, I handle the camera object anyway, so I could just use the entity object.
Mm-hmm.
Alright.
Now, what exactly are you planning to add? Besides the, like, LookingGlass goes in the book, are you adding, like, the ability for us to look through the portals?
Well, I'm just working on LookingGlass API at the very moment, making it so that people can generally animate the camera object in the... So what happens is that LookingGlass uses that camera object to create the texture.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're using that, say you have a camera, like an actual physical camera object thing that you make as a tile entity, for example. In order to pull what that can see, then you create a view at that location. Now, say the camera moves, well, you want the view to move too. Or maybe you want the view to kind of pretend to move based on how the entity would move, or so forth. So we need to actually be able to move the view around. Hello, Glass Pelican.
Glass Pelican.
Indeed.
Just to ask, there's a lot of people that are asking, like, they want to come into your channel, but they feel they're going to be rude if they come in. They're like, can we come into your shop? Like, he's not going to really notice unless you say something.
Well, I don't want general public joining the...
Well, not general public, no. I'm talking about the people that are in TeamSpeak right now.
Yeah, I mean, like, if I don't know them, generally.
Fair enough. Okay, so it's just good to know. There you go, guys.
Sorry.
Well, it's just...
If you want, I can catch you after the stream, and then next time I'll know you.
Right, next time you know it.
So, XCOM. So using the LookingGlass API, would I be able to, with the coding knowledge, be able to create a Mystcraft add-on to animate portals? conceivably, maybe. The problem with animating Mystcraft portals is that the Mystcraft portal is arbitrarily sized and shaped. It's the same reason I'm not going to do it, or at least not doing it at the moment. It's weird to do. It'd be really hard. But if you wanted to create your own portals and animate with that, then soon I've already come up with the things that need to be built into LookingGlass to support that, more or less. I know what needs to happen. At the moment, it's built as a mod that references LookingGlass internals. Once I can make it so it can do that via API calls, then that will be in there and it'll be possible to do with your own mod. Okay. So yeah, let's gonna expose that anyway. I might as well just make a high world view. Oops. Yeah, I might just make it so there's an iWorld view get camera. And then when you have access to the camera object, you can use that to create your own animators. The pivot animator will be here as a reference, and you can use that to create more complicated animators. This is messy. Lots of the determination of where it should be positioned was written by Shadow King, and I haven't bothered to rewrite it because it more or less works. So yeah. In fact, I say that, but I'm not sure it works. In fact, I think it might not do anything at all. So maybe I should just remove it. The important part is really this. Yeah, so would you say it's easier to learn Java or some other language for that matter, by yourself or with a teacher? I think it's easier to learn most things with a teacher, so with a teacher. If you're going to have to pick between what language is easiest to learn by yourself, maybe Java, because Java will hold your hand. But if you want an environment you can play with and a language that's pretty powerful and interesting and fairly easy to learn, look up Love 2D. It's the Lua programming language, scripting language really, but Lua is very powerful. It's mostly C syntax, and I really like it. It's a nice language. All right. And then we'll need a set animator. So yeah, we could do that way. Alternatively, I can actually provide the entity here, but of course it's still, every camera needs its own animator because they have their own targets. So You do not want to reuse the animator object, which might actually be a good reason to use the factory method. Huh. Yeah, I don't play music on my streams, but maybe I should.
What kind of music?
Well, I'd probably play game music. I've been considering playing some Smooth McGroove.
Hmm.
And I'd probably ask, big giant circles, for instance. Very common. I'd really like to enforce a one-to-one for camera. So maybe it does have to be a factory. Because that would kind of prevent people from reusing animators, which, given the set target thing, is important. Let's see here. Maybe that could be made to work in such a way that first you register a animation factory, and that could be reused by a string identifier, and then you set the animation by string identifier so that it calls the factory with the information for the factory and builds the new animator. It doesn't actually force anybody. If you build the factory, it doesn't actually force anybody to not reuse animators, because you could conceivably have a factory that just returns the same animator. But I guess at that level it doesn't matter. String identifiers for animators might be a bit overkill. Maybe.